In this session, we're going to be looking at lessons 32, 33, and 34. In lesson 32, the first concept we're going to get into is we are going to be doing the inverse functions. And the inverse function is actually one of the easier concepts in this book. All you do to get the inverse function is you simply switch the x and the y. And there was nothing mathematical about that. We just simply switched them. And then we're going to isolate the y again. And by doing that, we will get the inverse function of what this linear equation is. And so you can switch the x. Now you can mathematically bring the y to the other side, bring the x to the other side, and divide everything by -2. When you do that, you get y equals 1/2 x minus 3/2. This literally is the inverse function of this equation. This next concept in lesson 32 is you're going to be looking at arc sine of √2/2. Now, sine of an angle is going to give you a side. But when you're finding the arc sine, the arc is going to be the angle. And so the arc sine of √2/2 is going to give you an angle. Now, arc sine is going to be second function sine in your calculator, or sine to the -1. And then when you do that, you can put in radical 2 divided by 2, close parentheses, hit enter, and you're going to get 45 degrees. So the arc sine is 45 degrees. Now, I know in the book it's going to tell you don't use your calculator. Use your calculator. Let's look at the next one. It says arc tan of -1/3 √3. Arc tan of -1/3 √3. So we're going to go in our calculator. We're going to hit arc tan, and we're going to go negative, and we can do √3/3 is fine. Go ahead and combine those. We got -30 degrees. This next one actually is a really good one to look at. And you go ahead, it says cosine arc tan of -3/5. So we went ahead and put that in our calculator of cosine arc tan of -3/5. And whenever you get the answer, you will notice that that is not an answer you normally recognize or a decimal. You can't do anything with it. You can't frac it. You can't do anything with it. So what you need to do is you need to hit the x squared button. And when you hit the x squared button, it's going to square your answer. And then you will hit enter. And now, once again, that's not a decimal that you recognize, but you actually can frac that one. And the reason is because the first decimal that you got was actually a radical, and it won't take it and put it back in radical form. Now, this isn't your answer, but this is the squared version of your answer. So this is 25/34. Now, once again, this is not your answer, but is the squared version of your answer. So if this is the squared version of your answer, then you need to get the square root of this to get the actual answer without it being a decimal. So you get 5/√34, multiply it times √34/34, then your answer is 5√34/34. This is the answer that they have in the book, but you couldn't have got that from your calculator unless you squared it. The one concept that we're going to look at from lesson 33 is how to deal with trapezoids. And there's two things that we're going to look at in trapezoids: how to find the area of a trapezoid, and then how to find the middle or the median of a trapezoid. And these are the two formulas you're going to need to write down your formula page. Area of a trapezoid equals 1/2 the height times the base 1 plus base 2. And then the median, or the middle line, is going to equal 1/2 of base 1 plus base 2. So let's first look at the area of a trapezoid. And the area is going to equal 1/2 the height, 8, times base 1 plus base 2. So you get 12 times 8. Of course, the 2 and the 8 can cancel. That becomes 4. So 4 times 12 is 48. So the area of this trapezoid is 48, and the dimensions in this problem happen to be in meters. So 48 meters squared. Now looking at the median over here, the median is going to be half. So what's the median? The median in this case is going to be 4x plus 1. So we're actually going to do this more in an algebra fashion, or like making a true statement. So 4x plus 1 is the median, so we can write that down, equals half of 2x plus 2 plus 7x minus 2. So these will cancel. We end up with 9x over 2 equals 4x plus 1. Let's bring the 4x over here. So 1 equals 4x. Now 9 halves x is the same as 4.5x. So 4.5x minus 4x, we'll bring that to the other side. So we have a half x, multiply both sides times 2. So 2 equals x. So we didn't exactly solve for the median, but we did solve for x by using the formula of how to solve for the median. This next concept is from lesson 34. Lesson 34 is going to have 3 really good concepts. The next one is called summation notation, and it's going to be this kind of funky looking E that we have here. And this is where you're going to go to math, and you're going to go all the way down to 0, and you're going to see summation, and it actually gives you that little figure there. When you hit enter, it's going to, you see all the blanks where you can actually enter this into your calculator, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And in place of x, we're going to hit that button right there, which is next to the alpha, and that gives us x. And it doesn't have to be x, it can be any letter. And we have 1, up top we have 4, and then on the right we have 2. Then I'm going to hit that button again. And so you can see it's exactly how it is written up there. Now when we hit enter, we will get the answer, and the answer is 20. Now you look at the next one. The next one's kind of a good one. We can clear that out there. Same thing. I'm going to go back to math, down to the 0, and hit summation notation. You get the empties, and then you're going to fill in, and I'm just going to hit, it doesn't matter if it's J. See, I'm going to hit the X button. I'm going to hit that same alpha button, and then we'll hit 0. Up top is a 3. Over here, now you're going to have to really add the parentheses, and I'll go ahead and put it in there, and then let you guys see how we did the parentheses. Alpha plus 1, close, close. So that's how we entered that one in. You see all the parentheses there and how sharp that is? And that gave us a decimal. I do not think that is right. Let me look. Oh, it is right. We're going to frack it. 23 over 6. Nope, that's not what they had in the book. So let's just make sure that I did that right. I don't think I did, but anytime you mess up, you can always go to edit, which I don't know where that button is. So I realized what I did wrong is I wrote the problem down wrong. If you look at the arrow up there, what you have right there is that's actually a J up in the exponent there. And so I put the J next to the 2. So that was where I went wrong. But the parentheses, you can see how to enter that. And so now when you hit enter, that's a fraction, but that's an okay fraction. That gives you 16 over 3, which is actually the answer to this problem. This next problem is lesson 34, part B. And it is, as you can see on the board, I've got linear regression. Linear meaning line. So you think y equals mx plus b, where we're solving for the b and the m. Now in this case, your calculator is actually going to give you as a and b, but it. Same thing, A is the M, and then B is still the B. But these are going to be linear regression or experimental data is what I like to call them, because that's what it is. It's this problem right here. We're going to look at experimental data. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to enter this top set of numbers right here into your calculator. Then you're going to enter the bottom set of numbers into your calculator. Now, the top set is going to go in line 1. The bottom set is going to go to line 2. The top set is think of X. The bottom set, think of Y. And so where you're going to do that on your calculator is you are going to go to Stat. And then you'll go right there to Edit. So Stat, Edit. And I'm actually going to delete all of those. Actually, I think I can clear list. No, it's not happy with that, so we won't do that. We'll clear them manually. Okay, so let's put in those numbers. This is actually on page 224. That way you can enter the numbers with me if you want. So you get 48, 70. Whenever you enter them all in, that's what it will look like. Delete anything that is not necessary. So once you have that, then you can go to Stat. And now you're going to go over to Calculate. You go down to Line Reg. You see Line Reg AX plus B because that's what we're doing. And there's that A and the B that I talked about. Then you're going to hit Enter. That says List 1, List 2. Those are the lists that you filled in for. List 1 being the X, List 2 being the Y, and that's how you wrote it in. Then you hit Calculate. When you do that, it's going to give you what you need, the A and the B. The A and the B is the M and the M and the B. So your answer is Y equals 0.0744x plus, or this is a negative, minus 2.0227. So this would be your answer to this experimental data problem. Now, the exception here is they actually have S and C for X and Y, which I think is salt and carbon. Yeah, salt and carbon. And so it just depends on each experimental data what variables you're dealing with. This last one from lesson 34 is a real thinking problem. And what we're going to be doing is decomposing functions. Okay? Now, what we've been doing before is combining functions. And so this one actually is already combined. And so we've been putting them together. Now we're going to take them apart. And the FOG symbol here means F is the base equation and the G was plugged into the F equation. And what they're asking you is, when they were split apart, what did they look like? And so this is where you're going to have to do a little bit of critical thinking. And so that means the G was put into the F equation. So I'm going to guess that this was put into the F equation. So G of X is X squared plus 1. And I'm going to say that F of X is the square root of X. So that means that what they did was they took this and they plugged it in for X, because that was what they told you to do. Take the G equation and put it into the F equation. This would be your answer right here, obviously minus what I did right there. Same thing. And on this one, they say FOG of X is that. They actually give you that the G of X is that. And they say, what must F of X have been? Well, if G of X is that, and it's in the numerator, I'm going to say that F of X must have been 1 over X. And they took this and they plugged it in for X. So your answer is F of X equals 1 over X. And that is it for lessons 32, 33, and 34.